Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor here, and I'm starting in a little bit different tone. You can probably tell because this is a tone a little bit more of respectful wonderment of the guests that we have on today. We have joining us a woman whose TED Talk I watched years ago and was hallway conversation for weeks because this woman, Dr. Terry Wahls over at the University of Iowa, was actually able to defeat progressive multiple sclerosis, which has affected actually many people near and dear to me, without the usage of any drugs. Purely through smarter eating, was able to defeat this horrible condition. And we have Dr. Wahls joining us today. I could be more thrilled to have her on the show. Welcome, Dr. Wahls.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, Dr. Wahls, let's get straight into it here, and let's tell us your story and go into as much detail as you're willing, because truly it is an incredible story.
So, forgive me.
No worries.
Okay, so I have secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. I was diagnosed in 2000 with relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis, and that was on the basis of a history of visual dimming that occurred in 1987 and then appeared to improve. But in 2000, I began to have trouble stumbling and falling, had a big evaluation, including MRIs of my brain, my spinal cord, a slew of blood tests, nerve conduction velocities, and a spinal tap. And the physicians told me that I had multiple sclerosis. I asked for a second opinion. I went to one of the best MS centers in the country, the Cleveland Clinic. And they looked over my records, had me repeat the story, did an exam, and they too agreed that I had multiple sclerosis. At that point, it was called relapsing remitting MS, and that's the phase that 80% of people with MS are diagnosed in. So they have periods where things get worse, that's called the relapse, and then symptoms slowly improve, and that's called the remission. And the assumption was that when I'd had that bout of visual dimming in the early 1980s, that was a relapse. And so I was advised to take a medication. I took Copaxone with the intent that would reduce the likelihood that I'd have more worsening episodes or relapses. So in the next 3 years, I had just one episode, weakness of my right arm, which improved with steroids. So you might think that was a huge success. But the problem was I'd gotten progressively weaker. It was more difficult to walk, more difficult to even sit in a regular chair. And in 2003, my physicians told me that I'd transitioned to secondary progressive multiple sclerosis and suggested I take a medication known as mitoxantrone or novantrone, a form of chemotherapy to suppress my immune cells so they could not attack my brain as vigorously. And that's when I'd reached the conclusion that despite seeing the very best people in the country, taking the latest, newest drugs, I'd gotten steadily worse. And so it was time for me to begin to do, if I was going to do everything that I could, I should start reading the medical literature myself. And so evenings, I would log on to pubmed.gov and began searching and reading. I read about other conditions with shrinking brains, and that was things like Huntington's disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's dementia, Lou Gehrig's disease, and multiple sclerosis. And I saw in all of those studies that it appeared to me that the mitochondria were not working very well, and they were sending messages to the brain cell to die too early. And that was why the brain cells were dying, the brains were shrinking, spinal cords were shrinking. And then I found more articles that showed using some vitamins and supplements, you could protect those mouse mitochondria, and the brain did a little bit better, and the mice did better. So I began experimenting with some supplements, and that began the journey, which would culminate several years later with the discovery of functional medicine, embracing the paleo and ancestral health movement into creating this very nutrient-dense diet that was designed specifically for my brain and my mitochondria, and an exercise program, electrical stimulation of the muscles program, that in the period of a year took me from being unable to sit up in a regular chair, walking short distances to canes, otherwise living in a recliner, to being able to walk through the hospital without a cane, even bike, and even an 18-mile bicycle ride with my family. The following year, I did a trail ride with my family. And the year after that, I was able to secure funding to conduct a clinical trial testing the Wahls protocol in others with progressive MS. And that study is underway. We're, as a matter of fact, had a study patient today. So we're very pleased to be working hard at answering that question.
Dr. Wahls, that's just such an amazing and inspirational story. And can you tell us, so you mentioned just ensuring maximal nutrient density and getting back to a little bit more of a ancestral or whole foods type of diet. What were, and I also noticed that you have a wonderful picture and link to the Vitamix website on your website. And anyone who listens to this podcast know that we are fans of the Vitamix and of the veggie smoothies. So I'd love to hear more about that as well.
So in my research, I was looking at what is the nutrition that we know brain cells need to thrive. And slowly over the years, I built a longer and longer list of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, essential fats. And then I'd also had been well aware of the ancestral health movement. I became aware of Dr. Cordain's work in 2003. What I did that I think was so brilliant was in 2007, I took my long list of brain nutrients and said, now, if I create a diet, a food plan so that I know that I'm getting these nutrients in my food supply, and I go find foods that I could get here in the Midwest, and that I do things that were pre-agriculture, so I'm staying away from grain and dairy. That's how I created what I functionally call, the greens, sulfur-rich vegetables, bright colors, grass-fed meat, wild game, wild fish, organ meat, and seaweed concept, that if those are the foods that you eat, you don't have to worry about how hungry you are. If you just eat from those food groups, you have a very high probability of having a nutrient-dense diet that will take great care of your mitochondria and great care of your brain.
And what a compelling example of not only because oftentimes we're told that we should eat a nutrient-dense whole food diet because it will keep us well. But what you demonstrate in such a profound fashion is that if you're not well, this lifestyle may actually be able to do things for you that are literally not possible via any other mechanism.
Absolutely. You see, Jonathan, you and I are alive because of self-correcting chemistry that keeps the concentration of various salts in our bloodstream and in our cells in that very narrow range that's compatible with life. And for all that self-correcting system to work, we have to keep providing it the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fats. So the best way to treat disease is to provide the nutrients that self-correcting system will need. That's why, that nutrient-dense diet, from my perspective, and what I see in my clinics, that is the most effective treatment for chronic illness of any type.
Now, listeners, I would encourage you to literally rewind that last 60 seconds and listen to it a couple of times, because what Dr. Wahls just described is so seminal, and it's a point that we talk about all the time. We use slightly different words. We'll talk about how we need to fix a healthy body will automatically do things that become more difficult if the body's broken down, and our job is to heal the body first. And for example, like a healthy body will pursue a healthy weight naturally, and we talk about it like a homeostatic regulatory system, or we talk about it a bit like a set point, where your body is designed for health. And if you can ensure that your body or the system functions properly, you will achieve results that really you can never take a broken system and patch it up. Like, it's still broken. But when you maintain the system itself, that is so key. And as you show, can be life-changing and life-saving, Dr. Wahls.
No, Jonathan, we are so interconnected with all the building blocks that we need to run our chemistry. I think that's why a number of the studies that have had people take a pill form for various vitamins and supplements never do very well as compared to the studies that look at how many servings of fruits and vegetables and berries did you have every day. Those studies always show dramatic favorable impact on health. The more vegetables and berries that you have, the healthier you be. If you're taking vitamin E or vitamin A, vitamin C by itself, that may or may not benefit you. If you just take a pill on top of a crappy diet, you're still going to have crappy health.
Exactly. And in fact, what your story and your research, which again, please go visit terrywahls.com, check out our books, check out our videos, and check out the Wahls Foundation, make a tax-deductible donation, because what we're talking about here, and Dr. Wahls is describing, and Dr. Wahls, people often ask me, because the research I did and the lifestyle that came out of it recommends double-digit servings of nutrient-dense vegetables per day. People often think that is like, why in the heck would I ever eat 12 servings of non-starchy vegetables in a day? And I describe it, and I'm curious as to your thoughts, but really your story demonstrates this as a therapeutic dose of natural nutrition.
Absolutely. I find it interesting when I reordered, and my diet what's fascinating was I became a paleo diet in 2003. My health had still declined despite being paleo. It was in 2007 when I understood the nutritional needs of my brain, and I provided structure to that paleo diet that came up with the plate full of greens, plate full of sulfur-rich vegetables, plate full of bright colors. And actually, I was having 2 to 3 platefuls of greens. That my health made this dramatic turnaround. I think for particularly people who have any kind of health problems, they probably do benefit greatly from that additional structure that I provide that tells them how to design their food plan every day to maximize those critical nutrients.
Well, and Dr. Wahls, I'm curious, when we talk about maximizing critical nutrients and these therapeutic doses of nutrition, what, in your research, I've heard some people characterize fruits as vegetables with more sugar. What say you?
I classify the food groups that I want people to eat. Green leaves, that's pretty easy. Should be a leaf that's green and not poisonous. And a sulfur-rich vegetable, that's really in the cabbage family, onion family, and mushroom family. And then that third group is colored. And to be colored, you have to be colored all the way through. So beets, tomatoes, peppers would be colored. Peaches, plums are colored. Berries are colored. An apple, a pear are colored on the outside, but you slice them and they're white on the inside. So they happen to have a lot of starch and not as many antioxidants and flavonoids. And bananas have a lot of starch, not so many flavonoids. So those aren't in the colored group. In my study protocol, you can have those vegetables or those fruits after you've had 9 cups of other vegetables and fruits. And that would probably be 6 cups of greens because we expect 3 servings of greens. So you have to eat a boatload of fruits and vegetables before you get any of the starchy fruits.
Mm-hmm. And I think that ordering is so important because it truly, like, we've got to get those in, and you can only eat so much food. So there's an opportunity cost to every time we eat. And to me, that was one of the most compelling arguments I had heard in my early days of research around grains, and that like are whole grains high in fiber? Well, whole grains are higher in fiber than a donut, certainly, but they're dramatically lower in fiber than non-starchy vegetables and lower fructose fruits. And if you're eating grains, you're not eating those other things. So
That's
there's
right.
an opportunity cost there.
Exactly. They're starving you. Plus, our grains now are particularly like they have a lot of Roundup in the grain, which acts as a chelator, binding up the minerals, creating nutritional deficiencies for us. Plus, the grains will probably have phytates, which bind minerals as well, and lectins, which increase inflammation. So there are a number of reasons that it's probably a better health decision to take the grain out of the diet.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and you mentioned one of the key reasons we want to eat these nutrient-dense vegetables and lower fructose fruits is flavonoids. And I'm curious as to your research, or just even with the Wahls protocol, what, if any, role teas, specifically green teas, and cocoa or cacao may have.
So the green teas, yerba mate as well, and cocoa, cacao, do have a lot of flavonoids. They have EG, CG, quercetin as well. What these particular antioxidants do is they help rebalance the enzymes that are involved in the processing of toxins and eliminating toxins. So we encourage the regular consumption of those compounds, either as teas or in smoothies, in puddings. They're terrific stuff.
And what are your thoughts, Dr. Wahls, on, so you mentioned like one of the ways you could consume green tea is as tea, but there's also some thinking around taking a little bit of green tea, putting it in the Vitamix along with a smoothie, and actually you're consuming the whole tea leaf. What do you think about that?
I think that's a wonderful thing to do. I get I have a big stash of the Japanese green tea, matcha tea. Now, since their nuclear problem, I'm not quite sure what I'll do when that stash is depleted. But I particularly liked having the green tea, powdered tea, that I would use to flavor smoothies, make a hot tea with that. It was convenient and very nice. But I agree with you. I like to use the whole leaf in the Vitamix, whether it be a yerba mate or a green tea leaf.
Well, I just find that to be, because a lot of people, at least in my experience, are not, you either like the taste of green tea or you don't. There's kind of no in between. And if you don't, just throwing a teaspoon or a tablespoon of bulk unbagged green tea, one, it's incredibly affordable. I mean, you can buy a 2-pound bag of green tea, which would, in this context, last you a very long time.
Yes.
And you won't even know, and especially if you've got the Vitamix, which again, neither one of us work for the Vitamix Corporation.
Yeah.
It's just very good at what it does.
It's very convenient. Green tea is also a great thing to put on top of a roast that you're going to bake. It will soak into the roast. You'll bring in some more antioxidants. It's a nice meat tenderizer.
Oh, well, that's fascinating. Well, and Dr. Wahls, so what are your thoughts on the exercise element? How much of your miraculous recovery do you attribute to things outside of the nutrient-dense diet? Or would you say that it pretty much was all the nutrient-dense diet?
This is based on the observations now we have from our clinical trial and my clinical practice in 5 years of my own personal experience. For me, if I go off the diet, I am likely to have, within 48 hours, severe and horrific levels of pain, which can take up to 3 weeks to get rid of. Needless to say, I have figured out how to be very, very careful on my diet. And that's about a quarter of the people I interact with will have that level of sensitivity, that a poor food choice will lead to an acute symptom worsening in 24 to 72 hours. So food sensitivities are common. nutrient deficiencies. Probably 90% of the American public have diets that have multiple serious nutrient deficiencies. So that's a big problem. And you can certainly probably improve fatigue. You can slow down the disability by a nutrient-dense diet. But if you want to recover function, you're going to have to grow more muscles. And you're going to have to improve the strength and endurance of muscles that become profoundly weak. That may slowly improve if all you do is work on the diet. But if you add in a focused exercise and electrical stimulation of the muscles, you can accelerate the speed of recovery. And before I went off to medical school, I was into Taekwondo and competed nationally. And in 1978, I was at the Pan American Trials for the women's welterweight, full contact free sparring, and got a bronze medal. So I was into athletics and sports a great deal. So I was very comfortable with a high level of training expectation and comfortable with doing E-stim. Probably more comfortable than the average person off the street would be.
Well, and Dr. Wahls, I love this story. I love the profound demonstration you've given us. I mean, you have been the change we desire to see in the world, as Gandhi puts it. And the other thing I love about this story, in your story and your approach, is so the tagline to my first book, The Smarter Science of Slum, part of it is eat more, but smarter. And it's in contrast to this concept of the reason we have health problems is because we're eating too much. But implicit in that assertion is that it is possible to starve your way to health. And as you've shown, like starvation is not healthy. Eating the right types of foods is literally, this isn't like some marketing fun, like eat more but smarter. It is the most robust, scientific, biological, neurological approach you can take to live a happy and healthy life, is by eating more, but of nutrient-dense foods. Not only do they heal you, but they also make you too full for garbage.
I would encourage people to go look at my website. If they go to the community pages and read the forum, one of the areas that people can post in is how their lives have been changed as a result of the Wahls diet. And you'll see, entry after entry of people who have talked about changing and adapting some of the dietary concepts, and the many and diverse set of conditions that have been helped. It's not just MS. There are mood problems, Parkinson's disease, other general health problems, some autoimmune, some just, things like heart disease, diabetes. And that mirrors what I see in my clients. When people adopt this diet and eat the 9 cups of fruits and vegetables, when they come back in 3 months, the most common thing I hear is, I can't stuff another forkful of food into my mouth. I am not hungry, and the weight is just falling off. I've not felt this good in years.
And it's fascinating because I think having that, the weight loss ensues because the body is healed, and a healthy body does not want to be obese. I'm personifying the body here, but it doesn't. Just like it doesn't want to be underweight, it also does not want to be overweight. And when you make those dietary changes, that's something even Dr. Wahls, just a personal example. My wife, I forget the name of this condition, but she was born, and a lot of people in her family have, like the back of her upper arm wasn't smooth. It had kind of like bumpy things on it. They weren't visible, but it just wasn't smooth skin. And she saw a bunch of dermatologists because she's a younger woman, wants to wear a strapless dress, wants to feel comfortable with her arms, and just there was nothing. Maybe put cocoa butter on it. Maybe I didn't do anything. And she about 2 or 3 years ago started what I call essentially my version of the Wahls protocol, where we all are saying very similar things, which is just eating the most nutrient-dense foods you possibly can. It went away. It's just gone. She just woke up one day and was like, Jonathan, my arms are smooth. And she was just like, well, I don't understand. Like, honey, a healthy body does miraculous things, and that's what you're starting to experience.
If you get rid of the trash and put in all the building blocks, your cells will self-correct.
And that's not, people sometimes hear that. And that's why I so appreciate you taking the time to chat, is people can sometimes hear this basic truth that we're talking about right now, which is this truth of self-correction, as this woo-woo, like, oh, the body just magically heals itself. It's not magic. It's the furthest thing in the world from magic. But just like you said, everything about our biology is designed to propagate life.
That's right. We have many complicated systems in our cells to maintain the salt levels in this very narrow range. And we expend a lot of energy to do that. We expend a lot of energy to keep things in this as optimal range as we can. And as we get starved, our biology gets more and more distorted. It wants to function properly. We have to make sure there's plenty of vitamin K, A, C, E, flooded with antioxidants, the essential fats, and that chemistry will happen more and more correctly. And what I see in my patients and in our trial and in the mirror is that people will, as they adopt this, will youthen. The years will keep falling off. Now, my kids and I laugh. We say, well, at some point I'm going to start aging again. But so far, my doctors all say, every time I come back in, it's like, wow, you look 6 months younger than you did last time. But I'm sure I will start aging sometime soon.
Well, I know. I love it, and I love it. And Dr. Wahls, I want to thank you for joining us here. And I want to encourage all listeners, please, first of all, search for Terry Wahls on the internet. Go to terrywahls.com. Watch her TED Talk if you haven't already. Just viscerally take in her story, because it is a perfect medical example of what we're talking about here around the body seemingly automatically being able to heal itself and seemingly automatically being able to achieve a healthy weight. It isn't magic. It is the most hardcore metabolic science you could imagine, but it manifests itself in such a beautifully simple way if we can keep our body saturated with the nutrient-dense foods we were made to eat. So, and please also, if you're into charitable giving, I can't think of a better foundation than the Wahls Foundation. You can get more about that on Dr. Wahls' website, which again is terrywahls.com. And Dr. Wahls, again, I just want to thank you for being who you are, doing what you do, and joining us today.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, everyone. Hopefully this has been as inspirational for you as it has been for me. And remember this week, for sure, to eat more and exercise less, but to do that smarter. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.